So you guys know that sales is probably very important in life. It's very important to be able to sell yourself. And off late, something that we have been struggling with in my business is selling our service to people. Now, if you don't know what my business is about, I'll have a video show up over here. Go ahead and check it out. But we have been having issues with actually getting in new customers and showing what a problem can solve. That's sort of because we're trying to create like a new segment. And obviously, with creating of new segments, there's awareness that needs to be spread and all of these different things. Because of which we've actually started going out on these sales approaches where we're trying to come up with creative solutions of how we can actually get new customers on board and how we get them to pay us for our service and the problem that a service solves and all of these different things. So we've been thinking about ways that we can do this. Now, to help you better understand how we actually went about going about this whole sales process, I've broken down this video into two parts. The first part is a pre-sales process, which talks about why we went into going to like a sales approach and why we're actually doing all of this selling, and the mentality required or the mentality that we have incorporated pre-sales or going into this. And the second phase is what it's like actually executing this stuff, right? So what it's like to go out on the field and do like selling, which is what we also did. And I'll be sharing tidbits and very interesting stories from that whole experience too. So stick around for the rest of the video if you want to know about how to sell, what we did, what worked, what did not work. Now, in terms of pre-sales, the first thing is why we actually went on sales. It is simply because we are trying to, get more customers. We are not having, like, there isn't awareness in the market for what we're providing right now, like I said. So we had to do something to get clients because it's not like customers just going to fall in front of your hands, right? So we actually had to go out there and do some sort of thing where we create a lead magnet or some lead gen source where we can actually get customers. Now, in terms of sales, just to be clear, there are two different types of sales and, leads and lead gen. Leads are basically what you get out of sale or pre-sale. Like, let's say I have some sort of paid advertisement that I run up on Instagram. From that, the people that click through and go to my website and actually try to get my service is a lead. That one person is a lead. So there are two types of leads. One is a warm lead and the second is a cold lead. Now, your cold leads are people you have no idea about and they have no idea about you. A complete stranger. They don't know your service. They don't know the problem you're trying to solve. They know nothing about you. So it's obviously a little bit more difficult trying to get a cold lead to convert into a customer and all of that, simply because these guys, they don't know you. Like, when there is some sort of familiarity, at least there's some trust, which is something that's very important in sales. But there are a lot of ways to go around this. There are a lot of ways to build trust. So that's not something to worry about. But warm leads are people that you know. They can be in your friend circle. They can be your family members. They can be somebody in your apartment. These guys are warm leads. They know you. They know that, okay, tomorrow if this guy's going to try to sell me something, he's not going to try to cheat me or get like some sort of, loophole or escape out of this, right? So in our first phase of sales, we actually approached a lot of the warm leads that we know, which means people that are like in our friend circle. Our target audience consists of a lot of HNIs and UHNIs, which basically means high net worth individuals or ultra high net worth individuals. So I know a few people, like probably 2-3 in my friend circle who might be from that sort of segment. So I approached them. I told them, look, this is what we're doing. Could you please give us some recommendation? And anything of that sort would be of great help. We possibly got one or two leads, but that was it at much. But that was it. We weren't able to actually convert them into customers. But that was the first phase, right? Whenever you're trying to sell something to anybody or you're starting out on a business, think about everybody in your circle that you can approach. I know for a fact I haven't approached everybody yet, but then again, that's just how I am planning on doing things. So everybody in your circle, ideally who you think can be part of your audience or who is part of your audience, go ahead and reach out. To help understand cold sales, I have broken down it into 4 points in terms of the pre-sales, and it should better give you an understanding about how all of this works. Now, point number 1 is rejection is expected. So with sales, right, it's a game of volume, especially with cold reach outs. You need to, the average numbers of what a lot of sales professionals expect is out of 100 sales, they expect to get 10 leads. Leads are basically people who are interested. Again, they haven't bought your product, they're just interested. And out of that 10, they expect to convert 1. So you can imagine the number of people that you need to approach to actually be able to convert 1 customer. So sales is just a game of volume. It's the number of people you approach, not the, like, obviously you can refine your quality of how you deliver your sale and all of that, but that's a prerequisite. You have to do that. If you aren't doing that, then you're obviously a little lacking in the game of sales. But if you just think about it as set no expectations is something that I thought to myself when I've gone on this whole sales things. I've done a lot of embarrassing things, which I'm going to be talking about in the post sales experience. I have shamelessly put myself out there. Stick around if you want to know what I actually did. But expectations and not setting expectations is something that helped me. Like I went into it thinking that, you know what, even if we don't get even one of these customers, it's fine. I'd rather try and fail and know that this didn't work than just sit and think that it might or might not have. Now, the second biggest advantage that you can have, even if you're not a salesman, is being compassionate about your product or service. If you actually think what you are offering has something to solve for someone, you will naturally be the best salesman in the world. Simply because it's you know how a lot of people, like a lot of business people say that this is like my baby, this is my child, and you actually see them talk about their product or service, and if they actually mean it, it will come through like that, because that's how passionate they are about the problem that they're trying to solve. And again, if you have the skill under your belt, you can just naturally sell. So try, you can even create this, like you can try adding certain things that actually make you feel better about you as a person, right? So like with our business, what we're thinking about doing is actually creating a grassroots setup where we can develop artists in the long term to be able to do things where they develop, I mean, where they get skill net, upskill and all of those beautiful things. So that's something for me that makes me feel more passionate about this, and obviously a lot of other things. But you can create sort of these things in your business that make you feel way more compassionate or way more like involved, or more into your business basically, and then sales becomes a piece of cake. Now the third thing is being ahead of your game, knowing what questions comes up in the customer's mind or possible customer's mind, knowing what they might ask, or knowing what they even might say like to you before you even go into it. Like when you say like, can I talk to you, and if they tell you fuck off, like that they're going to do that. Knowing all of this is really important. And obviously most of it in fact is assumptions. Like this sales cycle that I went on was our first attempt. I did not know everything that a customer is possibly going to say, simply because I haven't interacted with any possible customers, like probably a few, but that's at best. So knowing what a customer might tell you, knowing what somebody like it, some questions that might arise, some things that they might deny, some things that they might be like, no, this is too much or this is too less, no, I can't do this. Knowing all of that can really help. Now the fourth thing is, it might be really hard getting into it, but it does get easier. Trust me, like when I went on the sales experience, right, which was quite like nerve-wracking. I was very I was anxious, I was nervous, all of these things, right? Very like I was feeling very scared, basically. And I went into it thinking like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And then I went on the first sale, and then I was like, okay, fine. I got rejected, but I was like, okay, it's fine. It's just another human. It's not like I'm talking to God or something. So it's fine. Breathe. And then the second one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one, and the fifth one. And then it actually started getting easier and easier. And then until like the seventh or eighth one, it actually like we got them on as a lead. I'll be talking about that in a second. I am sorry for all of the teasers, but it was quite exciting. So going into all of these things, it's very common across different like things in life, right? With business, with a career choice, with a relationship. Going into it, it might be scary. It might be like, okay, you know what, I'm worried. This might not work. This might work. But once it actually does start, and once you're in that zone and you're doing it, it gets easier. Okay, now we go to the post-sales experience. Now, when I say post-sales, I actually went out and did sales. I'm not just throwing like, facts at you saying that you should do this or blah, blah, blah. These are things that I actually did. Now, what did I do? So again, like I said, our target audience is HNIs and UHNIs. So there is this like really rich area near my house, and I've always, just because that the road that goes past that area is like a main road too. So I've always seen, the houses on both sides, and I've just been like in awe of how beautiful the homes over there look. Very, very big homes. Obviously, you can tell that they come from a lot of money. Very beautifully done homes, even. It's just fun to even look at for that matter. But I knew that this area has our audience. So I was like, you know what, let's go there. Let's try approaching these homes and get some customers or try to show them how our business can solve a problem for them. Even just get their number. Like, that's a huge thing. Like, even if we can just share them like a message of what we do and in the future have them on as a lead, it could be really helpful, right? So that's what I did. I set out, I put on my Paint Me Fit. If you guys have been keeping up with my reels, which I've been posting off late, which I hope you guys have been getting some value from. It's mostly inspired from Saket Bokle's content that I've seen his shorts, and I know how inspirational they are to me. So I'm somehow trying to translate that over here, but it's mostly going to be focused on business and all of that. So a little bit different in that way, but definitely inspired by him. All credits. So in that, would have seen that I put on my Made Me Fit and I set out to this area. Now, like I said, it gets easier after the first conversation. But one thing that I immediately realized from the first conversation itself is it must be like your intro must be conversational. It cannot be like the first thing that I went and said there was like there was this Zomato delivery guy who was delivering something to this woman, and she was standing in like her veranda or whatever, the front yard, I guess. And she picked up the order, and then the Zomato guy left. So immediately I just swooped in. Again, I'm holding, like, I'm wearing my Paid Me Fit. I'm holding my iPad and all. I'm thinking, like, you know what, I'm not going to look like some random person over here, hopefully. And I approach her and I'm like, can I take 5 minutes of your time? And immediately she's like, no, sorry, not interested. And I realized quite soon that, you know what, the 5 minutes of your time is not going to work, because then that comes off too salesy. And with sales, like, I think the best thing that we can do is try to be as conversational as possible, because again, you're trying to build trust. You don't ask somebody, can I take 5 minutes of your time, when you trust them. When I trust somebody, they can just ask me anything, right? So that was the first thing that I learned quite early on. Now the second woman, again, I improvised a little bit. I tweaked things and I said, like, hey, we're a painting company. I started off with that intro. But what's more important though was what happened towards the end of the actual pitch. Now I told her everything that we do, and she was like, okay, fine. And she was like probably around in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. I'm not too sure. But she said that, yeah, you know, my father is the one that usually makes all of these decisions at home, and he isn't at home right now. So could you come again tomorrow? So instead of like just walking away, being like, okay, I'll come again tomorrow. Mostly also from the point of view that I knew that I'm probably going to get chucked out from this area real quick. So I had to move fast, and I knew that I probably won't be accepted or welcomed over here tomorrow. So I was like, okay, fine. Can I get your number? So instead of just letting that lead go, actually persisting and trying to get something out of them, right? That's another very crucial sales skills. You need to be persistent, because sometimes a lot of people, they don't even know why they're saying no in the first place. So if you can actually figure out why, worst case, they'll keep saying no to you for every why that you try to figure out, or you'll at least know what actual problems your customers might be facing. Sometimes your whole business model or your whole communication strategy might be completely wrong. So just finding out why is another very crucial thing. Now, another thing with sales, I think it's a tiny point, but I must mention it, which is what I learned from this experience, was the no's, right? How do you deal with all the no's? So I got like 5, 6, I think around 5 to 6 no's in a row. And how do you deal with it? So for me in person, like, I have had to deal with failures in the past. Like, okay, what am I saying? Everybody's probably had to deal with some failure or the other in the past, right? Now, I don't know how you guys approached it, but for me with football, every time like I got injured and I'd go back to ground zero, for me, the most important thing, which is the simplest thing, but is very important for me, to just show up. Just show up to physiotherapy, show up to the next training session, whether you can train or not. Just sit on the side if you have to. Show up to your meditation, show up to eating right, show up to all of these different things. And that is something that translated here too, right? So even though after a few no's, again, this is not a lot. As a salesperson, like I said, it's a game of volume. You need to be willing to hear like 100 no's. But for those of you that think that you might struggle with this, for like 5 no's later, I just kept telling myself, you know what? We just show up. And that comes because of the times that I've showed up in the past. So if you actually make it true to yourself now, where you're somebody that just shows up when things go wrong, eventually you will know that, okay, when something's happening wrong or something's going to go wrong, you just know to yourself that, you know what, I am somebody that shows up. So whatever. Now, the best part, the lead that I actually generated, If some of you have been reading my newsletter, I gave a little bit detailed story about the whole phase before this. Also, you can go ahead and check it out. Check it out. I have it linked down in the description below. But if you're coming from the newsletter here, this is what you came for. And the part where I actually got this one lead, right? So I implemented everything. I started off with the conversational conversation. I kept things like light. I kept it like not like too salesy. And I also stayed persistent, which is another thing that I realized early on. And again, I had already handled all the no's, so I could stick through. So she was walking right down the street with her dog, very cute dog, Coco, his name is. And sometimes pet dogs that are walking, and especially when they approach me, and which is what this doggy did. Like he came up to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cute." And before I pet them, I obviously ask her like, "Is he friendly?" Now, automatically, I'm not gonna lie, it did happen by like a little bit just as out of instinct. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? Why don't we step on it and try? So she was like, yeah, he's friendly and all of that. And then I went into the whole like, I basically started my own company and all of that. And she was a little hesitant in the beginning, right? I could tell, like you can sense. And another thing was like Coco was pulling on to her. Like he wanted to go pee and poop, and they had like this area where they would do it, I'm assuming. So he was pulling to that area, and she also was on the run. And instead of just like being like, okay, never mind, because she did seem hesitant. She was like a little bit like, back off types. But I stayed persistent and I followed her. I literally ran behind her. It was kind of funny, but I ran behind her and then I was like, yeah, so this is what we do. And she was like, are you a student? And I was like, yeah, I am. I'm studying in Chitraka Parishad right now. And then she was like, oh, okay, interesting. You're a student and you've started a company at the same time. I was like, yeah, well, I'm in my fourth year, so I'm basically done with college, but yeah. And then she was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then I was like, how did you find Coco? Like, what's his story? And then I was like, while she was walking, I was like, I'm so sorry to be disturbing you because I know how it is like to be disturbed when I am walking my dog. Again, some relatability factor to build trust. Another crucial thing, right? The more in common that you have with your prospect, or the more you show in common that you have, again, it has to come naturally. But the more in common that you have, the better you like, the more trust that you're able to gain and all of that lovely stuff. So I told her, like, I hate it when people intrude me when I'm walking with my girl and like my dog too. And it's very blissful. So I'm sorry for that. But I just really have to tell you what I have to offer. And then she was like, okay, go ahead. And then I told her everything. And then I was still like, what's Coco's story, right? And she told me this beautiful story. She was like, we found him in front of this tea shop. These kids were playing with him and he had this collar on. And we bought him, like we took him in our car and then he fell in sleep in our car and he just looked so adorable. And honestly, I wanted to tap into a little bit more relatability there. It's a lot of similarities like with my story and how we got Juno. But I was like, you know what, don't overdo it. It's another important thing. Don't overdo like trying to be like trust and try to create trust and all. Just let it be like let it go with the flow. And so then she was like, yeah, okay, that's how we found him. And like, oh, that's a very lovely story. You know what? That would make a beautiful painting. And that's when it clicked, right? She told me a story about her dog. And I told her how our service, when we paint stories in your homes to make your homes more unique to you, can be something special to you. It's a problem that we solve for you. Immediately it clicked for her. She was like, okay, that's actually very interesting. That's something really cool. And that's when I realized sales is all about personalization, right? So if you know something about someone and if you know how your particular problem, again, this can be very personal, like her dog story, Coco's story to her was very personal. I got to know it from her itself. Again, if you can research this beforehand, then it's super good. But her story about how she found Coco was so personalized and so unique to her. And I delivered it in such a way. Again, this was just go with the flow. I'm not going to act like a sales expert when I knew what I was doing. I'm talking about what I realized here. When I did it in such a way that this is what we solve and this is what you have, like boom, combination of both worlds, like the best of both worlds. And it worked. It like we got her on as a lead. So much so that even like after speaking to her, she was like, yeah, I'm really interested. This sounds super cool. I really like what this is and all of that. She gave me her number. I took it down and I was like, I hope you have a nice day. And I walked off and I continue walking around the block, right? Again, I'm walking this area looking for more people. I go down the road, I walk around the block, there's nobody over there. So I take a round and I come back. And she's, again, Coco is still trying to poop, literally over there. So I continue walking around the block and I come and I see that they're still there. So she was like, and she could see, right, like on lost fool, I'm roaming around. So she was like, you want me to help you? Like, I can help you sharing this on like WhatsApp groups across this, like around this area. And that could probably help you more than what you're doing right now. And I was like, yeah, you know what, that would be really good. And then she was like, yeah, I'm really sorry about how I came off as a little bit rude in the beginning. And then I told her, like, look, honestly, like, don't worry about it. I expected to be stepped on quite a bit going into this. Like I said, no expectations. So don't worry about it. And then she was like, you know what, I really like that mentality. And then from there, I came back home, immediately responded to her. Another very important sales thing. When you get on a lead, don't keep them waiting for too long, because like, you know, this whole idea of like Coco's story, this is what we do, this is who I am, this is what a company is, all of those feelings are still very like high up in her memory, and they're all like, you know, very powerful, or I don't know, I'm not getting the right word for it. But the more time you waste, the more that feeling becomes like, okay, yeah, whatever, you're just some kid, some random kid. So the sooner the better. At least from what I have sort of heard. I don't know whether this is true. Like, maybe you can do the whole tease thing where I don't know whether that works or not. For me, I was too excited for it either way, so I had to come back and reply to her ASAP. But I responded to her. She shared it to the few other groups. She even gave me some copywriting feedback, which is not really feedback, but she corrected few grammar and spelling mistakes that I made in the message as usual. But that was helpful too. And yeah, basically the whole experience was very blissful. There were about 6 to 7, maybe 8 people that I spoke to. Out of that, I converted one as a lead. So the ratio is looking pretty good. Like I said, out of 10, you convert one into a lead. Out of one, you probably convert zero point 0.1 into lead. So I don't know how that's going to work. But hopefully we have her on board on a lead as a lead. We have to follow up with her in February. Let's see how things go. I'm really excited. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about how to go one to many. So this is one-on-one sales, like going to one person, speaking to them. And a lot of, like I said, you know, the feedback wasn't that great either. Even though I didn't get much volume, even having them to have a conversation with me was hard. So it's not like I'm actually getting to test my sale even. So to mitigate that, I've come up with another strategy, which I'll talk about in my next video. I'm also talking about it in my shorts coming up today probably. So subscribe to the channel if you want to watch it. And yeah, that's the end of this video, guys. So I hope you gained some sales value from it. This whole experience was very like adrenaline pumped for me. After coming back home, I was, even though after the whole thing, like after her and after speaking to another person, the security guard caught me and they told me like, "Bhaiya, ye nahi kar sakte hain," and all of that. And I was thrown out of there basically. But even then, I was very excited after the whole experience. It was very like, you know, full energy I felt. And yeah, but I hope you gained some value from this. And until next video,